Choice often appears only after geography has already narrowed the path. Civilizations rarely operate on open landscapes of unlimited possibility. Their movements are shaped by rivers, coastlines, climate, distance, and the slow accumulation of routes that become difficult to replace. The structures people inherit often continue long after the original reasons for creating them have faded. Roads remain, trade patterns persist, and settlements continue following channels established generations earlier. The question is not simply why people choose certain paths, but how often the path itself has already decided which choices remain available. History is filled with systems that continued functioning even after the meaning that once sustained them had disappeared. One of the clearest examples appears across the ancient Mediterranean, where geography created networks of movement that outlasted the purposes behind them. The Mediterranean Sea connected islands, peninsulas, and coastal settlements through a natural corridor of transportation. Ships moved with seasonal winds, relying on predictable patterns that linked distant regions. Harbors became points of exchange, and coastal cities grew around access to maritime routes. Beyond the sea, rivers shaped inland movement. The Nile created a narrow agricultural corridor surrounded by desert. The Tigris and Euphrates supported settlements dependent on irrigation and seasonal water patterns. Mountain ranges separated regions while also directing movement through limited passes. Across these environments, geography did not simply influence civilization. It created the boundaries within which civilization developed. Distance transformed every decision. A shipment delayed by weather could become a shortage weeks later. A blocked route could redirect entire networks toward slower alternatives. Settlements near major corridors adapted to the rhythms of supply, while those outside them developed different relationships with resources. Movement was never just movement. It was the result of terrain, climate, and accumulated infrastructure. Over time, repeated solutions hardened into systems. A route used for generations attracted more roads, more warehouses, more settlements, and more specialized labor. The original reason for the route became less important than the structure surrounding it. People continued using it because everything around it had adjusted to its existence. A trade path that began as a practical response to geography eventually became an organizing principle. Markets formed around it. Political boundaries followed it. Military roads often mirrored commercial routes because the same landscapes that allowed trade also allowed movement. Infrastructure accumulated where movement was already easiest, creating a cycle that strengthened existing patterns. This process rarely announced itself. No single decision created a permanent dependency. Instead, small adjustments gathered over time. A port expanded because ships already arrived there. A city grew because goods already passed through it. A road improved because travelers already needed it. Each improvement made the alternative less attractive. Eventually, the system began carrying its own history. A route no longer existed only because it was useful. It existed because entire communities had adapted around it. The network gained momentum beyond individual intention. Farmers near major markets adjusted production toward goods that could survive existing transport conditions. Traders planned journeys around established seasonal movement rather than unknown possibilities. Settlements waiting for supplies depended on the reliability of routes they did not control. The structure appeared through ordinary adjustments, not dramatic decisions. As networks expanded, complexity increased. More connections created more dependence. A disruption in one location could affect distant regions because the system had become interconnected. A shortage of one resource could alter labor patterns elsewhere. A change in transportation conditions could reshape economic activity far beyond the original disturbance. The same structures that created efficiency also created vulnerability. Concentration around established routes reduced flexibility. When conditions changed, the The system often attempted to preserve previous movement patterns rather than immediately reorganize around new realities. The infrastructure remained, but its relationship with the environment around it slowly shifted. This is where meaning could disappear while the system continued. A road might remain active even when the original purpose behind its construction no longer existed. A port might continue operating because generations had depended upon it, even as new conditions reduced its importance. An administrative boundary might persist because changing it required disrupting countless connections built around it. The system did not continue because everyone consciously believed in its original design. It continued because too many lives, resources, and expectations had accumulated around it. The structure became its own reason for existing. Silence often appeared before change became visible. A route became slightly less efficient. A settlement waited slightly longer for essential goods. A corridor that once represented opportunity became a constraint. These shifts were small enough to be absorbed individually, yet significant enough to reshape the larger network over time. The difficulty was not recognizing a single failure. It was recognizing when thousands of functioning parts were gradually creating a different outcome than the one they were designed to produce. Systems rarely announce that their original purpose has vanished. They continue performing familiar actions because those actions are built into the surrounding environment. Eventually, the distance between structure and meaning becomes impossible to ignore. The same channels that once created connection can begin limiting adaptation. The same infrastructure that enabled expansion can make redirection more difficult. Accumulation becomes both the source of stability and the reason change becomes slow. At that point, choices appear to return. People can rebuild routes, change patterns, and create alternatives. But the structure surrounding those choices remains. Existing roads still lead somewhere. Existing cities still depend on previous connections. Existing resources are still arranged according to older assumptions. Recognition does not remove constraint. It only reveals it. The most difficult question is not whether a system can change, but whether the conditions that created the system still allow change to happen without disrupting everything built around it. A network can remain functional while becoming less suited to the world it now occupies. A civilization can continue moving along familiar paths, while the meaning of those paths quietly disappears. The pressure is rarely located in one broken element. It exists in the relationship between geography, infrastructure, and accumulated dependence. By the time the pattern becomes visible, the structure has already shaped generations of decisions. What appears inevitable in hindsight rarely felt inevitable at the time. If this exploration stayed with you, you will find more on timeless questions, where history is examined through systems, constraints, and the hidden structures shaping human experience across time. The roots remained in place. The possibilities around them did not.